Hello folks, this is Engtelligent, Intelligent Approach to Learning English. And today we're going to talk about two things that are critical to understand if you want to become a proficient language speaker. They are connection and distinction. Why is it so important to get the grasp of these two things, of these two notions or concepts? Everything in our reality is interconnected. Everything. It may be obvious that you and I are interconnected by the means of you watching me creating a video. But we could also find more points of intersection between ourselves than meets the eye. For instance, we could say that we consist of the same thing. We could say we are humans. We could say we're both biological organisms. We could say that we're made of consciousness, or whatever you think we're made of. We're made of atoms. Anything, all right? And I think this is very important to know for a language learner, is because language is a system. And every word you are using, you're only able to use because it is somehow related to other words in that system. Being an advanced learner, it's great to understand because that trains your mind and you become a more holistic thinker. You see how everything is interconnected, and that allows you to create links between vocabulary that you learn. That allows your mind to be very fluid and very alive. That brings a lot of fun to your experience. You may know that becoming a proficient speaker is not as much about learning grammar rules as it is about being able to use language creatively. So that is something that I want you to add to your arsenal. How about this? You get two concepts that do not seem very related. Let's say, for instance, a human being and a blade of grass. What do they have in common? How are they connected? Which are not the same thing, by the way. But you could use the fact that they have something in common as a way of saying that they are connected in a certain way. You could approach it in both ways, really depends on how you want to do it. But let's just explore a human being and a blade of grass. How about this? You could say that a blade of grass could go into a meal that a human being will later eat. That's how they're connected. Or you could say that the blade of grass and the human being are ultimately made of the same implicate order reality, the absolute reality or consciousness, or the quantum field. That is something that you can say in scientific terms. What it makes your mind do is seek interconnections between points in space and time that do not feel very connected. And that creates a lot of holistic understanding of reality for you as a human being, and that amplifies your ability and the skill that you have in making sense of reality around you, which we represent via language, which is very cool. How about Buddha and the moon? How are Buddha and the moon connected? Think about it. And by the way, this is not a black or white question. There are a lot of grey areas, and you can also have lots of room for creativity when you're pondering these questions. My response to that might be something along the lines of, Buddha is a term for someone who is enlightened, and that I would define as being able to see the true ground of things and how and what everything is perceived by you, and understanding what you are. And being a Buddha, the moon becomes part of you because your reality undergoes recontextualization and you become able to see that everything is a part of you. Another exercise you could do is to grab a word list with certain words that may or may not belong to the same category, and then you could make sure that you can connect all these words while talking about the same thing. It's easier when the word list is grouped on the basis of all the words belonging to the same category, let's say thinking or animals. But an interesting twist comes here. Let's add a spin on it. What you can do is you can grab a word list of words belonging to one category and talk about something that is of a different domain. Talk about something that belongs to a different category. For example, you could have a word list on animals, but you could talk about the Bible. Or you have a word list that has to do with thinking, and it will contain words such as pondering, intellectual, contemplation, stuff like that. And you could talk about your family and see if you can use the words from this list to talk about something seemingly different. That will train your mind in seeking connections, and that will develop your ability to speak in a fluid way. Isn't that exciting? Another activity that you can do with connection is create a number of questions that contain words from that list on the spot, without preparation, impromptu. See if you can do that. And then you could respond to those questions using the same or different words from that very list or from a different list. So basically, what I'm trying to encourage you to do is to seek connections between words that belong to very different domains of life and reality. And that will help you train your mind and help you become a more nuanced thinker. Now let's talk about distinction for a moment. If you want to become an advanced speaker of English, one thing that is critical to understand, in my opinion, is that no two words are the same. There are shades of meaning. And if you are an advanced speaker of a language, that will suggest that you'll be able to feel the subtlest distinctions. And the more trained you are in this ability, the better of a speaker you will be. I have a video on this channel titled English is a Feeling, and you can go and check it out because there I talk about distinctions at length. But here I will just mention very briefly that once we spot an experience in reality and we separate that experience from the wholeness of reality, it's helpful if we give it a term, so we want to represent it by a term. Let's think of a giraffe, for instance. We have an experience in our visual field, and we classify that as an animal, which is a giraffe. So we attach the sounds giraffe to that particular segment of experience that we have. And when we're communicating with a friend and we're saying giraffe, they will have that feeling imprint that will give them an idea that we're talking about the same thing. So it's very helpful. Understanding distinctions is great because it helps you develop your vocabulary in the sense that you become able to slice your reality in a larger number of ways. And also it's great because it lets you know that synonyms are not complete synonyms. Let's take two words, let's say thinking and contemplating. How are they different? One thing that I notice learners do all the time is they just grab one word, like contemplating. Oh, we had contemplating here, and they replace the word thinking with contemplating mindlessly all the time because they want to show the examiner or their English-speaking friend that their vocabulary is broad. But if you want to actually become a proficient speaker, one thing that you need to be able to do is to actually understand why you're using this word or that word. Why say contemplating when you can just say thinking? Why make your life more difficult when you can make it simpler? in order for you to use contemplating in a way that is accurate, you need to be able to feel how contemplating is different from thinking. If you want to be able to do that, you need to create the distinction contemplating in your experience and actually feel how it is different from thinking. So when I'm saying the word contemplating, and I feel that the time has come for this word, I'm imagining a process of questioning in combination with thinking and staying with the question for a little while, kind of approaching it from different perspectives and different angles. And that is different from thinking, which is a very general term, a kind of a neutral term to mean a whole variety, a generic term to mean a whole variety of types of thinking. But what if we add pondering to the picture? How is that different? Isn't pondering about focusing on one question, whereas contemplating might take you off on a tangent, for instance? One thing you can do is add multisensory imaging to learning a word or expression. So here's what you can do. You can grab a word such as contemplating, and you could imagine a scene that has to do with contemplating. I imagine a meditative pose, candles, just perhaps a little bit of essential oils burning in my aroma burner, something like that. And then what would I feel when I would be contemplating? Oh, in my body I might feel quite relaxed, but I might feel a little bit of pressure in my brain or something. So I would imagine that. And then another thing that I could imagine is actually the verbal explanation of the word contemplating. And then I could go and check the meaning of it within a sentence, which would also be very cool. So when you start exploring words within a context, you get the feeling sense of what a word means. You may even add a translation into your first language if you're able to do so, if you have a corresponding word. You can do so, feel free. The more connections you create for one distinction, the better your ability to remember that word will be. So why learn about connections and distinctions? It helps you develop your mind, and you use your mind to speak language. The more nuanced your mind is, the more connections you're able to make, the better you're able to express your ideas, the more interesting speaker you become, the clearer your messages become, the more proficient you become, the more satisfied speaker you become. It teaches you to think holistically. It allows you to think by the means of analogy. You're able to spot the interconnectedness of all things in reality, and then you realize that language as a system also has a trace of that interconnectedness within it. So you apply the rule of larger holism to a system that is smaller comparatively, and you seek the very same pattern that exists within the greater reality, within a smaller reality, which is the conceptual domain of language. That is an ability that I want you to be able to train within yourself. One final thing that I want to say is that your first language vocabulary and the scope of it really affects and influences your vocabulary in your second language. I noticed this when I was working with students whose first language vocabulary was huge, and I noticed that it was easier for them to be motivated to learn vocabulary in the second language because they didn't want to lose that nuance of expression in their second language. So that was very exciting, I think. I'm going to leave you here, and I'm very thankful to you for coming here to share the joy of learning English with me. If you're interested in private practice with me, you can expand the description box under this video and find my email. I'm always happy to connect, and I hope to see you in the next video. Bye bye for now.